All right, welcome back to the Gear 30 TV YouTube channel. My name is Greg. On today's video, I'm going to talk about something that I feel is maybe one of the most important pieces of kit that you can get that many people overlook, or maybe they don't overlook it, everybody gets it. This is a common piece of gear to get wrong, and that is a sleeping pad. A pad is about more than being comfortable, it's about being warm. If you sleep directly on the ground in just a sleeping bag, you'll freeze. I don't care how warm that sleeping bag is. You'll freeze. You need a pad to keep you warm. But not all pads are created equal. Some pads are just filled with air and they don't really add any insulation. They're really just about comfort. That is fine when you're sleeping in your backyard and it only gets down to 65 degrees at night. And if you get a little cold, you can go inside, right? But having a pad without insulation, I think it's a very rare situation where that actually makes any sense. They don't really talk about a temperature rating of a pad very often. They talk more about R value and the way that they give insulation an R value, like insulation in your home, insulation in your walls or in your attic or whatever, have a certain R value, like an R value of 30 or something like that. And that just is telling you approximately how warm it's going to be. Now, I don't know exactly what an R value's temperature rating is. I just know the higher the number, the warmer it is. And our home R values are like 20s and 30s and that sort of thing. Well, sleeping pad R values are much lower than that. They're usually anywhere between 0, which is a pad with air essentially, and that might even have a R value of like 1 or zero point 0.5 or something like that. Up to the warmest R value that we'll talk about today is like an 8 point, what is it? 8.5. And this Thermarest X-Therm pad, which is my favorite pad, is an R value of like 7.3 or 7.5 or something like that. So if you're looking for a pad to keep you warm, you should have in 3 season use, you should have probably at least an R value of, ideally 4 or higher. But in my opinion, most people should probably just go for a 4 season pad, um, or something with an R value of like higher than 5, because in my experience, so many people that I've gone backpacking with, whether it's family members or friends, get cold at night, not because their sleeping bag's not warm enough, but because their pad isn't warm enough. Many times, I'll be with people who have a 20-degree sleeping pad, and they know that nighttime temperatures are only supposed to get down to like 40 or 45 degrees, and they say, "Oh, I'm going to be totally fine. I've got a 20-degree bag." And then they freeze and they don't know why, and it's because their pad wasn't warm enough. Your pad, because when you sleep on your sleeping bag, your body compresses the insulation, especially if it's down. It compresses the insulation under your body and it doesn't insulate at all. So now you're relying wholly on your pad to insulate you from the ground. If your pad doesn't have much insulating value, it's essentially like you're sleeping with half a sleeping bag. It doesn't really work. So having a really warm pad will increase the temperature rating of your sleeping bag, or at least get it to the right temperature rating. And having a pad that's not warm enough will decrease your sleeping bag's temperature rating significantly. All right, so let's jump into some pads that are currently on the market that are considered 4 season pads. And I'm talking about 4 season pads in part because it's winter time and in part because I prefer a 4 season pad all year round. Let me share my screen here real quick. A few brands out on the market that I have some experience with. One is Exped. Now, I like Exped as a brand. I've had an Exped down mat in the past. It was comfortable, it was warm, and it was well made. I consider that a great pad. I don't think it's the best pad on the market, but they are good pads. This particular pad is the Ultra 7R. It has an R value of 7.1, an approximate temperature rating of negative 20 degrees. This is going to be a pretty warm pad. You're going to stay warm sleeping in the snow with this type of pad. It is filled with down, so you don't want to blow it up with your mouth. You want to use the pump sack. If you blow it with your mouth, the moisture from your breath will get in there, and that's not good for the down. The down that they use is 700 fill down, not the highest quality down on the market, but pretty good. And it can be a plenty warm pad, but you'll take a hit a little bit with the weight of the pad using a slightly lower quality down. Anyway, in a wide long, which is what I use, 25 wide, 6.5 feet long, the weight of this Exped pad is 30.2 ounces. That is about 20, or sorry, that's about 10 ounces heavier than the same size pad from in the Thermarest X-Therm. And that's my favorite pad. That's this pad. This is a 12-year-old pad. I love it. Still, it's so well made. It still works great. It's still warm. I expect to use it for another 12 years. I've only had to patch it once. It was an easy patch. The patch is held. It's great. It's a great pad. And so I'm kind of comparing everything to the Xtherm because in my opinion, the majority of people I think are going to be happiest if you got an Xtherm compared to the pads. Spoiler alert, the pads that I'm talking about now I don't think are as good as the Thermarest Xtherm. But this down mat is a pretty good pad. $220. It's about $60 cheaper than the comparable size Thermarest Xtherm. For me, it's worth it to buy the Xtherm, but this Exped isn't a bad option. The next brand I will talk about is Sea to Summit. This particular pad, this 4-season pad, the Etherlite XT Extreme Insulated Air Sleeping Pad. That is a mouthful. This is a cool looking pad, and it's on sale right now for $137 instead of $230. That's a great deal for what looks like a great pad. R value of 6.2, that is a legit 4-season pad. If the R value is accurate. And the weight is 1 pound 9 ounces for a regular size. Let's find the wide long size. For a wide long, we're looking at a large, 25 wide, 6.5 long, 33.5 ounces. So that's 13.5 ounces heavier than the Thermarest X-Therm of the same size. The pack size is slightly bulkier than the Thermarest X-Therm as well. So it's a little bit cheaper. Well, right now it's on sale, so it's a lot cheaper, but $230 instead of $280. So that's not a bad pad. I haven't used the Sea to Summit pads. I've laid on them. They're comfortable. I haven't slept on them. I haven't used them out in the mountains. I don't know how durable they are. I think their stuff is pretty well made. I doubt it's going to be as durable as the Thermarest NeoAirs. Thermarest, in my experience, they just make more durable stuff. They use higher quality fabrics, and my experience with their pads is they just hold up better and they're just more durable than the competition. But yeah, this is maybe a good option if you're on a budget and at almost half price, it's like 40% off or so. Really not a bad pad. Getting into Big Agnes. I'm not a fan of Big Agnes pads. For about 11 years, I owned a gear store, an outdoor sporting goods store. We sold thousands of sleeping pads over those years, all different brands, including Big Agnes and Nemo and um, Thermarest and a bunch of different brands, Climate. And anyway, I've never really been a huge fan of Big Agnes pads. I've used them quite a bit, and they're pretty comfortable. They're fine, but I never was warm in them. They just weren't that warm. And my wife, anytime she uses a Big Agnes pad, she freezes. Anytime she uses a NeoAir pad, she stays warm. My kids, same thing. Anytime they've used a Nemo or a Big Agnes pad, they get cold when we're backpacking. So, um, anyway, this is the only 4-season pad that they make, the Campmeister Deluxe Insulated, and it's an R value of 7. So that's a legit 4-season warmth rating, if that's the legitimate rating. It is 35 ounces, so it's about a pound heavier than the comparable NeoAir Xtherm in a wide long. And pack size is about the same as the Xtherm. So it's a decent, it's a decent option, but it's a pound heavier, and my experience is they're not as durable. And my experience is that they aren't as warm. Um, for example, we sold Big Agnes pads with like a 3.4 R value and Thermarest NeoAir pads with a 3.4 R value. And I've used both of those pads side by side, and the NeoAir was noticeably warmer. I think that the R value rating has become a little bit more standardized than it used to be. But I still don't know that it's all that reliable. Anyway, this is not a pad that I think I would personally buy. I wouldn't spend my money on it. If they sent me one, I'd try it out. I wouldn't spend my money on it. I'd just go buy an Xtherm, especially considering that they're the same price as the Xtherm. Okay, getting to the Big Agnes, or I'm sorry, going past the Big Agnes, getting to the Nemo pads. There are two pads from Nemo that are considered all season or four season pads. The Tensor All Season Ultralight, 5.4 R value. That's a pretty good R value. I'm not sure that for winter camping on snow, that's as warm as I would like, but it's not horrible. It would be a good rating for like a spring, summer, fall backpacking pad or hunting pad, I bet. Let's take a look at the weight. It's a pretty light pad for a long wide. We're talking about 1 pound 4 ounces, same size as a long wide in the Neo Air Xtherm. Same size, same pack size, same weight, but uh, like 2 points in R value less warm. So 5.4 versus like a 7.4 for the Xtherm. I just buy the Xtherm. All right. And going on to the Nemo Tensor Extreme Conditions Ultralight Insulated Sleeping Pad. Also a mouthful. 8.5 R value. This, according to the R value, is the warmest pad available here in this little group that I'm talking about. Same price as the Xtherm. What makes it so warm? They use 4 layers of thermal mirror film inside the pad. This thermal mirror film is essentially an aluminum coated film that's in the pad. These these NeoAir pads, when you blow them up, inside they have essentially what's a space blanket mylar material that is they've got layers of it that are kind of connected together in sort of these triangle shaped baffles that help reflect the warmth. If you're laying on top of the pad, they reflect your warmth back to you and they reflect the cold from the ground back to the ground, and they create a layer of air inside that sort of helps buffer you from the cold. So they works really, really well. One of the downsides of this is that mylar is a little crinkly when you lay on it. The new Neo Air X therms are less crinkly than the original ones, which this is an original one. Um, they're less crinkly. They're still plenty warm. The Let me go back to my share screen here. The Nemo, the Nemo Extreme Conditions Ultralight Pad looks like this. It is quieter. Instead of using a mylar film, a layer, they use an aluminum coated film. So they say it's quieter, it's less crinkly. They claim it's as warm or warmer. It is a bit heavier than the NeoAir Xtherm. Minimum weight 1 pound 7 ounces for a long wide. So that's actually about the same weight as the NeoAir Xtherm. Because if this is a rectangular pad, if you get the rectangular version in the Xtherm, it's also 23 ounces. So about the same weight, very similar pack size, a little bit warmer, they claim. Now here's the caveat, or here's the concern that I have. I've owned many Nemo sleeping pads over the years, and they have all been significantly less durable than the Thermarest NeoAir pads. If you look at our collection of pads, I've got many different NeoAir sleeping pads because over the years I've gotten a few and I still have all of the original ones and they still work great and they're still durable and all those things. I've had many Nemo pads over the years, some that were purchased for me as gifts, some that I bought, and most of them, maybe at least half of them, I've thrown away because I put big holes in them, torn big holes in them that were too big to patch. The 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 biggest hole I've gotten in this is like a pinhole size that was easy to patch. Uh, I've gone through multiple Nemo pads that have they're just not that durable. They're not that well made. And it's maybe less about how well they're made and more about the materials that they choose to use are less durable than what Thermarest uses. So when I look at this, when I look at this tensor extreme conditions pad, if they use the same type of outside material as they do on their tensors, I don't trust it. I just don't think they're durable enough, especially during the winter when, if you're ever using it for mountaineering, if it's an extreme conditions thing and you've got ice axe or crampons or something like that, if you happen to accidentally scrape that with the pick of an ice tool or a crampon point or something like that, even just a little scrape could put a hole in that thing. The Neo Air X therms I find are quite a bit more durable of a face fabric. Now, the newest Xtherms, I don't have one of the newest Xtherms. Maybe they've lightened up the outside materials, but in my experience, they're still more durable materials. They're higher quality materials. They use USA built of the finest US and global materials. And in my experience with Nemo and Big Agnes, instead of using the very finest materials, they look for relatively cheap materials to keep their costs down so that they can make more money off their pads. That's my experience. I know a lot of people who like Big Agnes and Nemo pads. Um, I just don't. My experience hasn't been that great. I don't think they're durable enough. I don't think for the money that you're spending for them, I don't think you get a great pad. With that said, I would be interested in testing out this extreme conditions pad to see how warm it truly is. With my NeoAir Xtherm pad, I've been able to sleep with the pad directly on the snow, and I laid directly on the pad with my sleeping bag over the top. So what happened is I set my tent up on the snow, laid out my pad in the tent, so it's pretty much right on the snow. Then I laid on my pad and I laid my unzipped sleeping bag over the top of me like a blanket. And I stayed totally toasty comfortable. I didn't feel the cold come up through the pad, and in fact, in the morning, when I woke up underneath the pad, the snow was still powdery soft. Most of the time I would sleep on the snow, my body heat would melt the snow under the pad and then refreeze into ice if I was using a lesser pad. With the Xtherm, it insulates so well that it doesn't even melt the snow under the pad, which is a really a significant thing. So I would be curious to see if that tensor extreme conditions has that level of insulation, or if if it's just a claim that's unreliable, or if it's legitimately that warm. Then, if it's legitimately that warm, I want to see is it that durable, and I've got my doubts. So If it were me and I was choosing between uh, any of these pads, including this extreme conditions pad, I would get the Neo Air Xtherm. One of their weak points in the past has been the crinkly sound. They have minimized the crinkle. One of their other weak points is they were behind the game with their valve. Their valves weren't that great. Well, they've revamped their valves, and their new valves are pretty good. I'd say they're as good as the other valves on the market. If there is an area where they lack, I would say their pump sacks are a little less good than other pump sacks I've used on the market, but they're fine. It's a pump sack. It still works. So, I really like the Thermarest pads. I've had great experience with them over the years, and I continue to have good experiences with them. So, let me stop this. So, to recap, this thing is the best pad in the world, in my opinion. The Thermarest NeoAir Xtherm. If it were me and I was buying one new pad, I would buy a 4-season sleeping pad, the lightest one you could find that's durable and well made, it's going to last, that's light and warm. I would find that and I would use that as my pad all year round. It'll make all of your trips better if you sleep warm and comfortably. And in my opinion, there is no better pad in the world for warmth, weight, comfort, and durability than the NeoAir Xtherm. It's the best. 280 bucks, it's not cheap. It's worth it in my opinion. Um, anyway, I wanted to make this video because I've been out sleeping in the snow recently. I was just out in the desert sleeping and it was in single digits at night, and I was toasty warm and comfortable at night. I had a good sleeping bag, but more than that, I had a really warm pad. Sleeping right on the snow, no problem. Sleeping on frozen rock and in the bitter cold, no problem. I had no issues because of this pad. And it's lasted me 12 years. And I expect it to last me another 12 years. So, can't say the same about the other pads that I've had over the years. Anyway, thanks for joining me for this video. If you agree, share it in the comments. If you disagree, share it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. I want to know your experiences with your sleeping pads. What's your favorite pad? Which ones did I miss? Which ones did I not consider? Why am I wrong or right or whatever? I'd like to hear it. Also, if you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. I try to put out about one video a week on all sorts of things. Sometimes it's gear talk like this, sometimes it's adventure videos, wide variety of things. So if you love the outdoors, I think you'll enjoy this channel. So I invite you to subscribe and like the video, please. And thank you for joining me, and I will see you next week on the next video.